Hey guys, Chris Cook with Odyssey Training and Consulting. Thanks for watching. We're talking through the 4 rules of firearm safety. So if you haven't seen the overview video or rule 1 yet, make sure you go check those videos out. We're talking about rule 2 today. Rule 2, as I teach it, is we're going to keep the muzzle oriented in the safest direction possible at all times. So I've got a dummy gun here, inert training tool. We need to be very mindful and very attentive to where we orient the muzzle all the time. It's very, very easy to violate this rule, especially with handguns. Rifles and shotguns, in my experience, people kind of see it as this big stick and have somewhat of a more intuitive understanding of where the muzzle's pointed all the time. People can obviously violate the rule with rifles, but handguns is especially egregious, especially when we start putting people under stress and they have to do things that are a little bit more dynamic in training that might mimic a real world situation. So again, we need to be very mindful about where we orient the muzzle. A good place to point the muzzle at the bad guy. That's plan A. Plan A is going to be directly at the threat, or maybe if we don't have a direct threat, it could be the area of greatest threat to us at that moment. It could be where we think the bad guy might be. You know, think of something like a convenience store robbery. We shoot the bad guy and he runs out and hides behind a car or something like that. So I might hunker down behind something and keep my gun relatively oriented toward the threat. But if we don't have those situations going on at the moment that we're thinking about things, we don't have a good place to point the muzzle, straight up in the air or straight down to the ground work pretty well to keep the muzzle under control. There's a million different positions out there for how to keep the muzzle under control. There's you know, a bunch of different stuff that you'll see out there about how to keep the muzzle either straight up or straight down. And then you'll also see a big Ford Chevy debate about never point the gun up or never point the gun down. And that's kind of just a childish argument when we realize everything is a balance of risks. Everything out there, there is no 100% safe position. It's the safest direction possible. And we're balancing a bunch of different risk factors at speed in a moment to come up with the safest solution. So the idea that one position is safe or one orientation is safe objectively isn't true. So orienting the muzzle up, in my opinion, is kind of my default. If I don't have a better place to point the gun, I lock the gun to my chest in a position I call a Sternum Index. I'm taking the back of the slide and touching my breastbone with it. I'm also touching my rib cage with my wrist, just like so. And now the gun's locked to me. I know where it is. It's not pointing at me. We're not doing anything stupid or unsafe and saying, you know, this position's dumb because this isn't the same position I'm talking about. So the gun's locked to me. I know where it is. I can manipulate my environment underneath the gun. I could use a flashlight. I could open doors, what have you, all with this hand safely deconflicted. Take seat belts off, all that kind of stuff. So muzzle up in the center of my chest works pretty much in a lot of different situations for me to keep the muzzle very, very safe. I'm also relatively tall. I'm 6'2", so I have a greater propensity to get over people when it comes to maneuvering in crowds than having to crash under people or something like that. If I was 5'2", that might change my decision making a little bit. So for me, muzzle up is the default, locking it to our chest. I want to feel something, either the gun or my body or both, touching my chest to know that I've got a good proprioceptive index, rather than just floating the gun where small deviations now really change the safety of the position. So locking it in place is important. Guys, what we're going to talk about next is we're going to talk about a muzzle down orientation, how that might work well for you, different options for that. Guys, thanks for watching. Join the Odyssey.